Great. So I'd like to introduce Karen Apple with the City of Phoenix and Danae Presler with the City of Avondale, who are going to be talking about public EV charging. So take it away.
So we wanted to actually start because when we were a few months back, Karen and I did a survey to get an idea of what specific topics people were interested in learning more about. And electric vehicle charging infrastructure was the #1 choice by both the municipalities and all of our partners that are part of SCN that participated in that survey. So we are trying to scratch that itch partially today. You won't get the full electric vehicle infrastructure package because we have way too much to cover. So we're going to break it down into chunks. And today, Karen and I are excited to talk about public EV charging, specifically looking at level 2 charging. We know that DC fast charging is a really important component of this, but where cities have the most immediate impact is with level 2. And so that's going to be the focus of our talk today. And I've got up here on the screen some goals for us to be thinking about that other entities have been putting forward. So our utilities are doing a big part in kind of leading some statewide efforts. There's a statewide transportation electrification plan that was recently submitted to the ACC, the Arizona Corporation Commission, that would set a goal for the state of having 1.076 million electric vehicles registered in Arizona by 2030. And so we're kind of using that magic number right now as the statewide goal, though the final draft has yet to be adopted. I do just want to note that that number came from a study that was done by Rocky Mountain Institute that showed what Arizona would need to do, how many EVs we would need to have in order to keep within 2 degrees Celsius for global climate change. We can have a lot of discussions about whether 2 degrees is aggressive enough. Probably most of us on the call will know that a 2-degree increase is not nearly as livable as a 1.5 degree increase in global warming. So that's kind of where we're at right now, though. We have something out there for our statewide goal, and then both our major utilities in the valley, APS and SRP, have put forward their own goals. So APS has committed to having 450,000 EVs in their service territory by 2030, and SRP has said 500,000 by 2035. And SRP is really confined to the Phoenix metro area. Also, we'll note that recently there's been some more movement at the federal level, and the Biden administration has come out with a federal target of 50% of new car sales being electric vehicles by 2030. And here's where we are. So in Arizona, we are 4% of the way to that just over 1 million EVs that we're targeting. We've got about 42,000 electric vehicles that are registered in the state today. So Karen and I want to talk a little bit about how to take some of this statewide information and these larger goals, and how can our municipalities or our jurisdictions be a part of this? How do we slice off our piece of the pie? And so there's a couple of ways that Karen and I have been looking at this, and we are not claiming to be experts. We're not saying this is exactly what you should do. We're just saying, here's some ways that we've been thinking about it. And hopefully it'll be helpful for you in your work. So one of the ways that we are that Avondale is looking at, how do we see what our share of that pie is? How do we help reach that 1.076 million by 2030, is looking at data that's readily available. And so we've got some good data from the census and from MEG that's looking at projections for how our city will likely be growing. So based on that data, it looks like the state population will be around 8.2 million people by 2030. And then Avondale will have a little over 100,000 people projected by 2030. So really simple, all I did was look at what is our share, what is Avondale's share of the population. And we're at 1.23% of the Arizona population living in Avondale in 2030, based on projections. And so if we take that statewide goal and we say, all right, what is 1.23% of that? We come up with about 13,221 electric vehicles that we would want to be able to support in the city of Avondale. Some really bold assumptions with this elementary kind of mathematics. One is that I am assuming that people population is a good proxy for vehicle population. That may not be true. Population projections are assumed to be accurate. There's a lot of reasons that that may turn out false too. And then lastly, I kind of touched on this, but that statewide goal, the 1.076 million, that may not be sufficient either. So that gives us something to play with. And that's why I'm excited to kind of just share, here's maybe something to be thinking about. We know that people right now drive cars, so we can look at our population and hopefully help estimate that, because it's not as easy to get the data for your population of vehicles. And then Karen, I'm going to send it your way.
Yeah.
Talk us through forecasting.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why Danae and I are going through this is because as planners, we have to try to understand what's our projection, what's our forecast. So as Danae and I are talking about, there's different ways to slice this pie. And until we get some good consultant dollars to help us with the planning projects, we use some of these tools. So the way that Phoenix and the way that I took a whack at trying to understand how many electric vehicles are going to be within the city of Phoenix's boundaries is we got some EPRI data, and it said in 2020, we had over 8,500 EVs registered in the city of Phoenix. So at least I have a baseline. And for most of the folks that are on this call today, we can also provide you what the EPRI baseline showed for your municipality. So it said that Phoenix had 8,546 EVs registered. I looked at that statewide transportation electrification plan that Danae alluded to, and they took the mid-growth level projection to get that 1.07 vehicles in the state. So they said that the consultant team that put that together said they used about a 35% annual compounded growth rate. So if I take that 35% annual growth rate and work my Excel spreadsheet magic, it gives me 231,966 EVs in the Phoenix area by 2030. Now, I just want to caveat that I'm not going to bet my paycheck on that number, but it's something to start with, and it's something to plan for. I think at the end of the day, is that number low or high? I think it's a little low, but based on the compounded growth rate, that's what we have. So why this is important is because we need to take these numbers, and Danae and I are going to walk you through another tool that can give you kind of a thumbnail projection of how many EV chargers you're going to need. So it's good from a planning standpoint to understand where your baseline is. And Danae and I both understand ADOT, getting data from ADOT is like pulling teeth. So we've used the EPRI data that has been graciously given to us. And so again, we can share those baselines with you, and then you folks can decide if you want to try the population projection, or you want to try the 35% growth rate. And honestly, I need to go back and do the population like Danae's done and see how my numbers stack up. So I haven't done that exercise yet, but Danae just populated the screen with, here's the 2020 EV counts, your baseline counts. So Mesa, Lena, you're on there. Tempe with Grace, you've got some data. Chandler, Glendale, there's some data on here. So these are the numbers that I took to make my forecast.
And then it is kind of useful to note that the battery electric vehicles versus the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, that's also shared here. You'll have an opportunity to kind of play with some numbers in a minute when Karen walks through the next tool that she'll be showing. So feel free to, you can either write these down or ask us for them. And then you can also ask Karen for her super special spreadsheet that has all of the calculations embedded in it. And so you can just plug and play.
Yep. And again, if you want to practice with different growth rates, again, you can plug and play different growth rates into the Excel spreadsheet. So again, I use 35 because that compounded annual growth rate, because that was what the state transportation consulting team used as our mid growth.
So Karen, there was a question in the chat about how many EVs there are in Maricopa County. Are you able to provide that total currently?
The total,
we have that. I know it. So it's 42 statewide, and I think Maricopa County, we do have that data from Kathy Canute before she left APS. Maricopa County, I think, was at about 35,000. And I can circle back and look at her presentation, but I know she had it on there for the county. All right, hopefully everybody has grabbed your numbers. And now this is what Karen was talking about. And so maybe you can give them a quick rundown, and then I'll start sharing.
Yeah, so can we go to that webpage?
Yeah, here I'll stop, and then you go ahead and throw it up on your screen.
Well,
and meanwhile, I'll drop the link in the chat. And if you want to follow along with Karen, feel free to.
Yes, if you haven't had a chance to check out the DOE, the Department of Energy Alternative Fuels Data Center, it's got a lot of really good information on there. So let me find the light EV. It's called EV Pro Lite, and it's a tool that allows you to put in your number of EVs and what's projected, and you put it into the magic machine, and it spits out level 2s and DC fast chargers.
Has anybody else used the DOE tool yet?
Can you see my
screen? This is helpful then. Go ahead.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Estimate for a city urban area. And I'm going to pick Arizona. And I'm going to pick, let's try Phoenix Mesa. Okay. So I said right now I have 8,500 EVs in my city boundary. So you plug in the number that you have, and it comes back, and there's some assumptions, and you can change some of these assumptions in the tool, but it says right now I need 197 workplace level 2s, 158 public level 2s, 29 DC fast chargers. That's just my baseline today. And again, you can change out your vehicle mix over here on the side. You can increase or decrease your plug-in hybrids or your all electrics. So it depends on how you want to change up your mix. Now,
Karen?
Again, yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So does this account for residential home recycling?
It doesn't. It's just public and workplace.
Okay. All right.
And great question, Anthony. And again, remember, it says 197 and 158 and 29. To me, in my understanding, that's not solely what the city of Phoenix needs to install. That's what the city of Phoenix as a whole, businesses, so your Fry's, your 7-Elevens, your strip malls, they need to be a part of this number. That's not solely square on me, the city, to install all of these chargers. That's how I understand it.
Okay, thank you.
And so, as I said, my projection for 2030 was what, 230,000-ish. And you recalculate and then look at my big numbers really jump. So again, it's just a planning tool to help you and your teams kind of start to understand what's coming your way based on your EV projections. So again, until we get some hard edge consulting done on looking at forecasting, these are the best tools that we have found. Danae, do you have anything else to share on this tool?
Just that, so I had mentioned like there are some of those assumptions that you can play with are the percentage of all electric versus battery hybrids, or plug-in hybrids. So you can, you know, you can adjust to what you see. We do know that the overwhelming trend is towards full battery electric, and that you don't see as many of the benefits with the plug-in hybrid electric in terms of sustainability. So so you might assume more fully electric vehicles, for instance, or whatever you're shooting for. But just know that you can also adjust those assumptions there. And then there's the level of support on that tool. So full support, partial, or don't have any plug-in hybrids. And then there is a little one there for Anthony too at the bottom, that people that may have access to charging at home. Right now, the data shows that most of the people that have electric vehicles, they're primarily charging at home. So that's a really important piece of this EV adoption story. But it also shows that public charging is a key barrier to overcome because it alleviates that. Oh gosh, I just forgot my term for it. Range anxiety. Yeah. And so by having more public chargers available, you're alleviating some of that range anxiety that people have, and you're making it more visible to the public too. And then last, but by no means least, home charging is not available to everyone. And having public charging is critical for the equity factor in electric vehicle adoption.
Thanks for that,
That's all.
Danae. Okay, and thank you. And then again on this page, once Danae drops a link in there and you guys can save it to your favorites, it has some more resources of how much do stations cost. And we're going to go through a little bit of that today, but this page is just full of good resources for you to check out. Charging at home, multifamily. So it's a good.
I have a question. So for like in the case of Tanya, since she is with a tribal community, do they segregate out those communities, or is she having to be lumped in with a particular municipal region?
It looks like she's lumped in because here's the major urban areas in Arizona. Again, I'm not seeing Kingman on here, so I don't know how Kingman would get their data.
Okay,
so
that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's good to keep in mind, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
So let me stop share. Anybody else have any questions on this tool? Get a chance, take a look at it. There's some really good data and resources on the Department of Energy AFDC page.
I'll go ahead and restart this. And as soon as I go into presentation, I kind of lose my other tabs. So I can see a few of you, but if anything comes up, Anne, just cue me if you see anything, or Karen, if anybody's not questioning us, if anybody's popping questions in the chat or anything. So now that we've at least got some rudimentary numbers to be thinking of, or some targets to be shooting for, the next thought process is how do you prioritize where to put those charging stations? Because we know that we can't put in 2,000 electric vehicle chargers tomorrow. And so the idea of this talk is just to get us thinking about some of the ways that you can prioritize locations from a municipal or a public entity perspective. So the first thing that I do is look at where the existing stations are. I'm going to open up another tool in a moment that I use to kind of look at where there's charging stations currently that are available to the public. And then I'm primarily looking for where there's gaps. And so that can be, the most obvious one is geographic gaps. If you're looking for kind of what charging deserts are being called. Less obvious ones are looking for areas that are around apartment complexes. Those typically do not have easy charging at home. And so looking for ways that us as public entities can help support adoption for people that are living or renting their homes or live in a multifamily unit is really critical. You can also look for where we can have the compounded effects of renewable energy and electric vehicles by trying to charge our vehicles during the daytime hours when the sun is plentiful and we have more clean energy on the grid. So that means looking at like business sectors or where there's a lot of where people are during the day. So you can also look at daytime attractions. So maybe there's a zoo in your community. And if you've got, an opportunity to put charging stations nearby, that may help out too. So you're looking for gaps. And then the next thing is what do we have control over? And primarily that's our own city facilities. And so getting a list of your city facilities from your facilities team or your development and engineering services team is a great place to start. And then you can start looking for facilities that are near those gaps. And ideally, those are going to be public facilities that people want to go to, or as members of the public. So it's not going to be your public works field location. It's going to be your libraries, your parks, your community centers, what are some other good ones?
Museums.
If you have museums or
Ball
conference
fields.
halls. Yep, exactly. So if you can leverage that, there's multiple benefits. The other multiple benefit that I've been leveraging in Avondale is we have a library that's right on our Civic Center campus. And so we're able to use that. That's what I'm featuring today here is that charging station is serving two purposes. It's enabling adoption for the public. Public is able to charge there for free right now, and so are city staff. And because we don't have a high volume of electric vehicles in Avondale, it's working okay for us to share that model. If you are a Scottsdale and you have tons of electric vehicles, you may see that model doesn't work for you, for instance. But anyways, and then you're going to look at costs to kind of get more realistic. We're going to be talking about that more detail next. Karen's going to give us some pointers, but I also want to touch on some ways to reduce costs by looking at new facilities that are coming online. So we can save about 70 to 90% of costs if we get that charging infrastructure in place before the parking lot is paved and all the infrastructure is laid out. So anytime you have, especially with so many of our communities growing, anytime you have an opportunity to integrate charging into a new facility, that's a big cost savings. And that's also workplace and fleet. If it's a public facility, it could also work really well for what we're talking about today with public level 2 charging. Let's see, some other ones that are good at reducing costs are looking for those incentive programs that APS and SRP provides, or wherever your utility is located. Check with them to see if they have a program that helps you shave dollars and cents off of your equipment and installation for that. And then the last but most important is make yourself a timeline. And for many of us right now, we're getting ready for the next fiscal year. And it's time to put together those budget requests so that we can get more of these charging stations put in where the city has the most opportunity to really advance public adoption of EVs. So this little map that I've got here was something I used with my management team to indicate where there's current charging stations. It's an interactive map in real life, so you can zoom in and see that there's some charging stations. The green represents current ones. We've got just a couple locations. And then our red charging stations, these are the ones that we are putting in this fiscal year. So those are more immediate. And then the blue ones are our longer term opportunities. And so I've got those laid out on a timeline. All right, Karen, talk to us about money.
Yeah, money. We need lots of it. So we looked at hardware costs and installation costs. And having just gone through an installation process with SRP's rebate program and our contracted electrical vendor, I have a better appreciation for costs than I certainly did before. So these are just some sample costs that we pulled from an ICCT report. And I think we'll be providing that as a resource for you as well. So again, take these with grains of salt because there's so many variables out there, but your hardware cost, which is your cost of equipment only, not labor. Charger with a pedestal can range anywhere from 1,100 non-networked to sometimes you get economy of scale when you get a dual port charger. Networked, non-networked, again, anything that's networked, you're going to see an increase in your cost because don't forget, if you go with a networked charger and they do provide you lots of benefits, you get the data collection from a networked charger, there are going to be networking fees, what I like to call subscription fees. So if you think you can get that piece of equipment for $4,000, that's a capital cost, but you're going to have continuing operating costs on that networked charger. So make sure that you budget accordingly. It's not just a one-time buy, it's a gift that keeps giving. So hardware cost, again, depending on how many and where you get them. Certainly non-networked, I can find them cheaper than $1,100. Check your local utility companies, SRP, APS. They do offer some lower cost, non-networked charging opportunities. Installation costs. Boy, howdy, there's lots of things in installation cost. You've got labor, you have materials. So that materials means the conduit, the wires that you're pulling, panel upgrades. So that's what that means by materials. And again, take these costs with a grain of salt. We here in the city, we don't permit ourselves, but if Blink or SRP or somebody else is putting chargers in, there's the permit fee. So make sure that you've included a permit fee, and then there's the tax. So just some experience that I went through on the SRP install program. Don't forget of those wonderful staff charges that are going to hit your budget. So it's not just the electrical contractor cost, it's streets or procurement or other folks in your municipalities that might be hitting your budgets. And I know Grace knows exactly what I'm talking about because she experienced it in Tempe as well. So you got to make sure that you've got those costs included. And one of the other costs that kind of came out of the blue for me in Phoenix is we have a process for archaeology. So anytime that we dig or trench in the city, we have to do an archaeological process or an archaeological assessment. And our hope is that when we send it off to our city archaeologist is that she does her analysis and she comes back with a all clear, nothing extra. But one of my park sites that Parks provided to me to go install a charger at was flush with archaeological resources. And luckily our city archaeologist had a map of those resources. So she required me and my team to do archaeological monitoring, which means a physical person stands over the hole and watch the dirt be dug and making sure or just in ensuring that no resources are being impacted. That alone cost another $7,000 to just do that archaeological monitoring. Thank God it was just one park, and I wish it hadn't been that park, but that was a cost that kind of came out of the blue for us. So I don't know if other municipalities have that requirement, but we do in the city of Phoenix. So, and again, it took more staff charges hitting my line item because other departments were doing work on my project. So make sure that you have an understanding of labor, materials, permit, taxes, and any other adjacent or other costs that could hit your budget. So, and again, another thing that we faced was electrical upgrades. This is huge. And when you're deciding where to site your facility, and Danae alluded to this and talked about it, you have to understand what your panel capacity is, because you may need more panel space to allow for a 40 amp breaker, or if you've got a dual port, the EV charging companies like for you to have 100 amp. You can use less, but they recommend 100 amps. So can your panel accommodate that? And if not, then you're going to have to throw more money at it to upgrade your panel. And it could need a transformer, and transformers are not cheap either. So first and foremost, when you're out there doing all your planning work, understand your panel capacity, because that will have an impact on your budget. Trenching, boring for our SRP project. We didn't do a whole lot of trenching and boring. We did we did direct boring, but we did do some excavation for the concrete pad where we sat the charger on. So again, as Danae's got on here, we've got cost recovery. Again, if you've got rebates or incentives, or you can do fee collection to try to offset some of those capital costs. And as all of us are waiting with bated breath on the infrastructure bills, that federal money will certainly offset a lot of our install and equipment costs, because we're going to need, as Danae and I just showed you, quite a lot of chargers we need to install to bridge the gaps. So Danae, any other comments on costs?
No, the only tip I would have, and this is probably not new for any of you that have been in the city business longer than I have, but when I put together my my supplemental budget request last year, I did one time. So I asked for 65,000 one time and 20,000 for ongoing, and that was to help cover those subscription fees, as well as start to create a buffer for my maintenance. And that was passed. And the language that I put in there was for up to 10 charging ports. And so that was successful in Avondale. I don't know if that's going to be successful everywhere, but that kind of approach to saying, here's what we need. And we don't know exactly how much everything will cost because of all the site specifics, but we hope to be able to add up to X many charging stations or ports.
Yeah, that's a great point, Danae. Up to is important, because when we went to talk with SRP on the rebate program, we really wanted to put in 50 ports. But after looking at the cost and doing the cost analysis, we were able to put 22 ports in. And that was really, it was cost based on the costs.
And I don't have any other questions on that. Maybe we see if our group does.
Yeah.
Hi, Karen. Hi, Danae. This is Grace.
Hi, Grace.
So
Oh, you just went on mute.
I did. I was trying to put my camera and I just pressed mute. Okay. Hi, you guys. I just wanted to add that, Karen, what you were talking about with the transformer and the pedestal costs. So when we took out the 4 blink ports and put in 7 charge point chargers using the SRP program, and the pedestal, so we had to upgrade the pedestal from a 100 amp to a 200 amp, and that was about $2,200. And then when you upgrade the pedestal, then you have to upgrade the transformer. And I honestly don't know what the cost of that was, but my guess is it's in the ballpark of 10,000. So I just wanted to kind of add on to what you were saying, Karen, about, so this was an existing project. We thought, well, we're just trading like for like. We're not going to have those pedestal and transformer costs. But at the end of the day, I mean, the rebate covered some of them, so that was good. But if we look at a lot of our other sites where we have older equipment and we're upgrading to newer equipment and expanding, then that's just some costs that have to be accounted for or considered.
Yeah, thanks for that. And the information, Grace, that's very helpful and something to consider. And that's why the city of Phoenix has Blink equipment, and it's kind of our legacy equipment. And we were able to leverage our business model with Blink, which provided free, no cost equipment as long as the city readied the pad. So it just allowed us to get down the road a little further and stretch our dollars. So if you have that opportunity to leverage low cost, no cost charging stations, that's again, just makes your money go a little further. We won't always have that opportunity, but we used it this time. And that certainly doesn't work for behind the fence. It worked for us in terms of public facing charging stations, but it wouldn't have worked for us on employee or fleet charging.
Is that Blink program still available?
Yeah, I can hook you up with Blink folks, and you can certainly talk with them about, they've got 3 different business models. It's called the hybrid to revenue share model. So Blink, our public chargers are not free. They are, I believe it's 49 cents a kilowatt hour for non-Blink members and 39 cents a kilowatt hour for Blink members. And they cover the cost of the revenue that we get off the machines. They cover the cost. They reimburse us for electricity. They cover the networking fees, and anything that's left over, we share on the revenue. We share 50-50. So we're certainly not getting rich off the deal. That's not why we're in the business of installing charging stations. But and then again, another parameter of that, as long as City of Phoenix readies the pad, Blink will give us free charging stations, no cost charging stations. So again, it gets us down the road 5 more years. It gives us time to understand where we need to put more charging stations, how many, what type, and it provides charging for our residents in the meantime.